It looked wrong. The nose drooped, the tail drooped, the fuselage bulged out in the middle and pinched in behind the wing, so that the whole aircraft appeared to sag along its length, as though it had been left somewhere warm. The crews called it the banana. They also called it the brick. It first flew in 1958, and it could not go supersonic. In an era when every air force on Earth was buying aircraft that could reach twice the speed of sound, Britain built a bomber that could not reach the speed of sound once. The Royal Air Force did not want it. It was a Navy aeroplane designed for aircraft carriers, and when the carriers were scrapped, the RAF was handed it as a consolation prize after two far more glamorous aircraft had been canceled underneath them. Senior officers made no particular secret of how they felt about that. They were wrong about it. It served for 32 years. It was, for most of that time, the best low-level strike aircraft in NATO, and it was not close. And when the RAF eventually took it to Nevada to fly against the most sophisticated air defense network the United States could assemble, it went through it. The reason it could do that comes down to one design decision that looks, on paper, like an outright mistake. They gave it a wing that was far too small to land on an aircraft carrier. This is the story of the Blackburn Buccaneer. But to understand why anyone built it, you have to start with a class of Soviet warship that never fired a shot at anybody. In the early 1950s, the Soviet Union began commissioning the Sverdlov class. Large, fast, conventional gun cruisers, built in numbers, and designed to break out into the Atlantic and tear apart the shipping that would have to cross it in any war with the West. The Royal Navy's job was to sink them, and the tool for that job was the aircraft carrier, which raised an immediate problem because the answer that had worked in the last war was in the process of becoming suicide. The traditional approach was to arrive high, where the air is thin, the fuel burn is low, and the range is long, then dive on the target. That had worked for decades, but by the mid-1950s, ships were beginning to carry radar-directed guns, and surface-to-air missiles were arriving. An aircraft at 20,000 feet is visible for a very long way and has nowhere to hide. It is a mathematical problem with a solution, and the solution is that the aircraft dies. So the Navy went the other way, all the way down. The reason that works is the shape of the planet. Radar travels in straight lines. The Earth curves. So a radar aerial mounted on a ship's mast can only see a target until the curvature of the sea gets between the two of them. Put the aerial 100 feet up and put the aircraft 100 feet up, and the ship cannot see it until it is roughly 25 miles away. At the speed the aircraft is traveling, that is a couple of minutes of warning. Go lower still, and it gets worse for the ship. An aircraft skimming the wave tops appears to a radar operator out of nothing, already almost on top of him. That was the plan. Come in below the horizon, at very high speed, at wave top height, get close enough that the defenses cannot react, and deliver a weapon. The requirement was written in 1952, and everything strange about the Buccaneer follows from it. Because flying low and fast is not simply a matter of pointing the aircraft downwards. The air near the surface is rough. It is heated unevenly, disturbed by terrain and by waves, and full of gusts. An aircraft moving through it at 500 knots is being hit continuously by moving columns of air. And how violently it is thrown about depends almost entirely on the size of its wing. A large wing generates a great deal of lift, which is excellent for landing slowly and for turning tightly. But every gust that hits a large wing produces a large change in lift, which means a large jolt. Fly a big winged aircraft at high speed at 200 feet, and the ride is genuinely brutal. The airframe accumulates fatigue damage. More importantly, the crew cannot read instruments, cannot navigate, and cannot aim. A small wing carrying a heavy aircraft does the opposite. Each gust produces proportionally less change in lift. The aircraft plows through the turbulence rather than being tossed by it. So for low-level flight, the answer is obvious. Make the wing as small as you can, except that this aircraft had to land on a ship. A carrier landing means arriving at the lowest possible speed, because the deck is short and the arrestor wires can only absorb so much energy. Low landing speed requires a large wing. It is the exact opposite requirement. Every other designer treated this as a compromise to be split down the middle. Blackburn refused to split it. They fitted the small wing, and then they built a system to make it behave like a large one for the 90 seconds it mattered. It is called boundary layer control, and the principle is this. Air flowing over a wing at very low speed tends to separate from the surface, break away, and stop producing lift. That is what a stall is. So they took hot, high-pressure air from the compressors of the engines, piped it through the wings and the tail, and blew it out through fine slots along the leading edge, over the flaps, and across the tailplane. That jet of air re-energizes the airflow and holds it against the surface at speeds where it would otherwise let go. The effect is dramatic. With the system running, an aircraft with a small, fast, low-level wing could come aboard a carrier at a speed that a much larger wing would have needed. It also meant that engine power and wing lift were now connected. Throttle back on approach, and you did not merely lose thrust, you lost the air supply that was keeping the wing working. Buccaneer pilots flew the approach on a high, steady power setting and controlled their descent with the air brake instead. It is a completely different way of landing an aeroplane, and it had to be taught from scratch. The same refusal to compromise shows up everywhere else on the airframe. Opening a bomb bay at 500 knots at low level produces enormous drag and violent buffet. So the Buccaneer did not have bomb bay doors that opened. The entire door rotated. The weapons were mounted on the inside face of it, and the door turned through half a circle to bring them out into the airflow, exposing nothing to disturb it. The tail cone split into two halves and opened outward like a flower, forming an air brake that worked at any speed without changing the aircraft's trim. And the fuselage was shaped according to the area rule, which requires that the total cross-section of an aircraft change smoothly along its length. Meeting that rule with a fat weapons bay in the middle meant wasting the fuselage behind the wing and drooping the nose and tail relative to it, which is precisely why it looked like a banana. The shape was not a styling accident. It was the arithmetic of transonic drag made visible, none of which stopped the early aircraft from very nearly killing the program. The first production version was fitted with engines that did not produce enough thrust. On a carrier catapult launch, in a hot climate, with a full weapon load, the margin was thin enough that losing one engine at the wrong moment was not survivable. Crews were killed. The aircraft acquired a reputation before it had achieved anything. That was fixed by putting Rolls-Royce Spey engines into the second version, which transformed it. But the reputation lingered, and it was still lingering when the politics arrived. Britain spent the 1960s canceling aircraft. The TSR-2, an extraordinarily advanced strike aircraft that the RAF genuinely wanted, was canceled in 1965 with the airframes ordered destroyed. Its replacement, an order for the American F-111, was canceled in 1968 when the money ran out. So in 1969, having lost the aircraft it had asked for twice, the Royal Air Force was told it would be taking the Royal Navy's carrier bomber instead. An 11-year-old subsonic design, built for a service that was losing its carriers, handed to an Air Force that had spent a decade explaining why it needed something else entirely. The crews who actually flew it changed their minds fairly quickly. From the late 1970s, RAF Buccaneers began going to Nevada for Red Flag, the large-scale exercise where NATO aircraft fly against a dedicated aggressor force and a full simulated integrated air defense system. The Buccaneer, which could not outrun anything and could not outturn anything, simply went underneath all of it. Down on the deck, in the weeds, riding through desert turbulence that would have shaken other aircraft to pieces, arriving without warning because nothing had seen it coming. Crews from other air forces went to look at it on the ramp. An old, fat, subsonic British aeroplane with a drooping nose, and then watched what it did. But Nevada is also where the bill arrived. In February 1980, during a red flag exercise, a Buccaneer lost a wing in flight. Both crew were killed. The cause was a fatigue crack in the main wing spar. The entire fleet was grounded and inspected. Cracks were found in a significant number of airframes, and some were never flown again. The very thing that made the aircraft exceptional, years of high-speed flight in the roughest air there is, had been quietly destroying it from the inside the whole time. The small wing gave the crew a smooth ride. It did not give the metal one. The survivors were repaired and went back to work, and they were still working 11 years later. In 1991, in the Gulf, Buccaneers flew their last campaign, not as strike aircraft, but as laser designators, marking targets so that tornadoes could put guided bombs onto them. An aircraft designed in 1952 to fly under Soviet radar and drop a nuclear weapon on a cruiser, finishing its career holding a laser spot steady on a bridge. It was retired in 1994 after 32 years. Now go back to the objections, because none of them were false. It was subsonic. It was. It could never have survived in a fight against a modern fighter. It was ugly, and the shape was strange, and it was old before the RAF ever took delivery. All true. And the wing really was too small. Genuinely, measurably too small for a carrier aircraft. Every one of those was the reason it worked. Subsonic meant efficient at low level, where supersonic speed is impossible anyway, and burns fuel at a ruinous rate. The strange shape was transonic drag reduction, not styling. And the wing that was too small was the only reason a crew could fly at 500 knots, 50 feet above the desert, and still read a map. There is one last thing. The Buccaneer was built to sink Sverdlov cruisers with a nuclear weapon, and it never did it. That war did not happen. The thing it was designed for was the one job it never performed. Meanwhile, the two aircraft that were supposed to replace it, the TSR-2 and the F-111, were both canceled before either entered RAF service. The obsolete stopgap outlived both of its own replacements by a quarter of a century. If you found this one interesting, subscribe for more stories about the weapons everybody underestimated.